Hello, everybody. It is that time. It's 4 o'clock. The market is done for the day. And, you know, the madness of the Fed has shocked the nation yet again. This guy just doesn't let up. The madness of as I mentioned before, I do not like this chairman. And there was somebody actually, I think, on one of the news stations. I think maybe it was on Bloomberg or something. They went and created a Dr. Seuss rhyme for the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So I'm not alone with my distrust and dislike of this chairman, and not just this chairman, but in general the Federal Reserve as well, because I do think they do more damage to wealth than they realize. They drive up things temporarily, and then they drive things back down with other news. And I do feel at times that it is, the SEC should regulate the Fed. The SEC it regulates investment advisors. It also regulates publicly traded companies in the form of filings. But the SEC doesn't regulate the Federal Reserve. And I think that that's unfortunate. And I think that if they started to do that, maybe we would have a little more sanity return, or we should dismantle the Fed outright by transitioning away from a bunch of carnival barkers sitting in a room looking at the data. We should just have far superior data collection and data dissemination systems, and let private market participants make the decision as to where interest rates should go based on what they think as business owners, as investors. And I think that would significantly transform the markets. So in a positive way, not in a bad way. That's where we're at there with the Federal Reserve. What's pretty interesting is, as I was complaining yesterday about it, I'm not giving any advice. I want to be clear on that. All of this is for educational purposes only, that you should make your own decisions or seek out professionals to help you with your decision-making process. I'm just trying to help give information to investors and people that are listening to me, kind of go through how the market system works, to hopefully help you know where you should get started, what you should look into. And I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Go to federalreserve.gov. There's a tremendous amount of data there, and you can pull down the data. It's freely available to everybody. And I think they're counting on people just not going to look at it. I kid you not. The government, the Fed, you're talking about the census gives out information. All these different levels of government, they provide a lot of this data. They collect it, they organize it. Sometimes it's in CSV files, other times it's in reports, and they make it freely available. Nobody has to pay for it. You don't have to pay a penny to get this, from these various sites. But what you do need to do is you may need to learn how to read it, and you might need to ask some questions and, potentially watch some videos. And like I said before, I don't run any ads on any of my videos. People that want to donate, they could donate through Patreon. But I ran the math, and after 500,000 minutes watched and computing just one ad every, 50,000 minutes of ads of 500,000 minutes watched, I computed that it was costing viewers over $6,250. I thought that was outrageous. So I'm like, you know what? YouTube making $6,250 from people watching, when I'm trying to help educate people and kind of going through my other things with regards to, going through the greatest book ever written, the Bible, and explaining my thoughts on that, and political commentary, voting stuff. I was like, you know what? I'd rather just rather have some people maybe donate to Patreon, because it's if they're comfortable with it, and not have to run any ads whatsoever, because I think it's just too much. So with that said, today the market, the S&P down about 1.5%. The NASDAQ, which I mentioned in past broadcasts, it's going to be more interest rate sensitive, folks. So if interest rates go up, growth tends to get hit a little harder, and hence the NASDAQ is more tech heavy. And as a result of it being more tech heavy, it fell twice as fast as the S&P 500. It was down over 3% today. The other big shocker that, wasn't, I don't know if I don't watch anything. I don't watch CNBC. I don't watch Bloomberg. I really don't like any of these stations. I haven't liked them in years because I think a lot of it is just fluff, and there's no real insights that I pick up from it. And it's a big distraction. So they tell you about a company, but then I end up finding myself looking at that company. It's almost like playing Candy Crush in the middle of your workday. It's probably fun, but it doesn't necessarily make you more productive. So if I accidentally turn on CNBC or something, I kind of view it as my Candy Crush moment. I'm having fun, but I'm not going to make any better decisions by watching it. From my perspective, maybe other people can. I can't. I have never found it to help me in any meaningful way. So instead, I focus on the filings. I go to sec.gov. You can download filings on any company, no charge. You can go there, pull up 10Ks, annual reports, 10Qs, quarterly reports, 8Ks, any material changes. Doesn't cost you a penny, folks. All you have to do is know the ticker. And if you don't know the ticker, there's even a function you can search by name. And I highly recommend it if you want to understand how you're buying companies putting your money to work in different companies, and like to understand, hey, I got a test for you. If you have somebody managing your money, read up on it through the filings and then ask them some questions. That might be a fun little experiment just to see if they really know what the hell they're doing. Just ask a few things. Hey, what's this company that you bought from me worth? Well, how much debt do they have? And you might be surprised how many advisors don't know a damn thing. They just buy the crowd. They're just like, oh, Facebook, it's out there and it's a big company. And then, somebody will ask them, how much is Facebook worth? 50 billion. No, you may want to add a zero. I think Facebook's actually worth about 600 to 700 billion right now. But my point is, you'd be shocked how little some of the people. Yeah, it's worth 800, so it's not 700. It's 793. I haven't looked at it closely, but if I said, "Hey, Facebook's worth 50 billion," you might have to be like, "Bobby, I don't think I want to watch what you say anymore." You didn't even know what one of the biggest companies in the United States is worth, but you're advising clients with their money, and you're way off the mark. Anyways, some of these companies, if it's away from my price by a significant margin, I don't keep track of every tick, but I do have an idea of which ones are worth the most. And for the most part, the companies that are worth the most in the United States tend to hover in the NASDAQ. The last time I checked, that index is probably, if you bought up all the companies in that index, it's probably like $13 to $15 trillion. So in that index is like companies like Tesla and Apple and Amazon, et cetera. There are some foreign stocks in there, which is unfortunate. I don't think that the U.S. should allow any Chinese stocks to be listed on our exchanges, given the fact that they violate intellectual property rights, human rights, and a lot of other rights. But somehow Wall Street has been able to convince the public and legislators that a country that is trying to destroy us from within, and not just with the United States, but destroy Western civilization. And it's an atheist ideology that runs the CCP, is using our markets to raise capital from our investors, which makes absolutely no sense. And in fact, I know one of the things that the U.S. was doing under Trump is trying to eliminate the ability of the people in our military that are serving to protect our sovereignty as a free nation, trying to take that off, where they would not invest in Chinese stocks. I think less than 2 years ago, this company that does a lot of these indexes globally, called MSCI, are basically, they changed their weighting of various nations, and clearly they didn't do what was in the best interest of humanity. Like, because if you kind of start with the premise that we only want to help capital flow to nations that are they share our values, right? It's not complicated. They share our values, and they believe in freedom, and they believe in the rule of law and religious freedom and not persecuting people, for various things. We would have never done that. But unfortunately, we have some amoral people that run some of these companies, and some of these companies, frankly, there should be alternatives developed that refuse to allow the U.S. taxpayer in any way, shape, or form to invest in nations that violate their own citizens' rights. And I know what some people are going to say. They're going to say, Bobby, our own government violates our rights. And that's a legitimate criticism. Yeah. Our government does currently violate some of our rights. And so what I would say to that is we all need to get much more involved. I said it once, I'll say it again. There's 47,000 Americans to every one elected politician in this country. There's one politician in D.C. Of the 535 jokers and carnival barkers in the House and the Senate for every 616,000 Americans. So we do outnumber them, and I think we need to start acting as such and vote the bums out and make sure that we're much more diligent. We got a lot of runway. We got to make sure that we do this. Obviously, if you haven't gotten involved, make sure you contact everybody that is your elected official. That's a U.S. senator, not your state senators, but your U.S. federal senators. There's 2 per state, and contact them to say you should not end the filibuster. And if you guys end the filibuster and you try to ram legislation through the Senate, which Mitch McConnell, which I mentioned yesterday morning, even though I do not like this guy, I think that he's married to possibly a Chinese spy. And I think he's done a lot of damage to this country for a bunch of reasons. But even he had the common sense to say, look, if they pass this filibuster resolution to take it down to just a straight vote from a filibuster of 60, it's going to be a 100-car pileup in the Senate. Nothing will move through the Senate at all. The Senate will be a dysfunctional organization at least till 2022. Not that it's not dysfunctional already, but it's just going to be that much more dysfunctional. So it is good to hear that there are some strong lines being drawn in the sand. This horrific person, Pelosi, wasn't even the first person on H.R. 1. There's a gentleman who's the son of somebody who's done a lot of damage to our free market system by the names of Sarbanes. It's his dad was the longest standing senator, I think, in the state of, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Maryland. I think it's Maryland. And his son is in the House of Representatives. And for some reason, his son is on the bill, which is the most disastrous and evil bill ever written that I've looked at, about H.R. 1. He's the first name on there. So watch for Sarbanes in the future. This little shyster, who's as far as I'm concerned, he's a shyster trying to pass this legislation. He's going to be someone the Democrats are going to probably try to hold up and elevate in politics on a national level, because for him to be listed ahead of Pelosi, and we all know how damaging Pelosi has been to this nation, and then some woman, I don't even remember her name, I know she's in California, who was a congressional aide for someone who was prosecuting no other than Nixon in the 70s. So she's been a swamp creature for quite some time. She's been in D.C. since the 70s. Pelosi's been, I guess in D.C. probably, I think, 30 or 40 years as well. And now we got a new swamp creature baby that it was brought into politics through his dad. And so I know we have we have a constitutional amendment for the president of the United States that, 2 terms. I really think that the public in the United States should seriously look at banning families by past a certain number of years. I think we should end political dynasties in this country permanently. Maybe it's got to be one full generation. There's a one full 25-year period. Nobody from your family can run. There's 330 million Americans in this country. I think that number is overstated, by the way. It's probably closer to 300 million. Okay, we'll just go with the census. 330 million Americans, and as such, there's at least 100 million families in this country. And if there's 100 million families in this country, why the heck do we have to have a handful of the same families over and over that run things into the ground in elected official, as elected officials in Chicago, for example? I'm sure you guys know about the Daley family, right? Anyways, you can look at the Daleys and how they've run things into the ground and put the city of Chicago into the situation that it's in now, with a communist running it who's probably been funded by no other than the CCP of China. Okay, so you can just go right down the list. Go look into it yourselves, folks. We should not have people past a certain number of years in service. There's a patent. The min-max on patents is like 17 years to 20 years. I think that one family should be limited. Total years of all government service should never exceed a patent. That's just my 2 cents. Pick which family member you're going to go with, so we don't end up with someone like Jeb ever running again. Little Jeb, who was there when the Chad incident took place in Florida and resulted in a bunch of electronic machines that have impacted voting for the past 20 years were installed. So think about how much corruption has flowed through the system because of these same families being involved with the switch and knowing what they needed to do. So anyways, one other thing I want to mention with regards to this inflation, that I think it's a disaster that the Federal Reserve Chairman is encouraging inflation to take place. Inflation is nothing more than stealing from people that are saving and don't want to chase risk. I think it's horrific that this is the policy of someone who's sitting in the Federal Reserve, as well as this has been a change in policy that is signaling that we are going to try to figure out ways to debase your money, debase your debt. And we've seen some of the damage of that this year with treasuries, 20-year U.S. treasuries down 14% on the year. Now, granted, some of this talk has really spooked the markets that we might have inflation coming, and it might result in a slowdown in economic activity. And you can see this if you look at the USO, which is the oil ETF. The United States Oil, you could pull it up, USO, United States Oil Fund. This is an approximation of what oil's at. That was down 7.64% today. Now, keep in mind, prior to today, the sell-off today, I mentioned it this morning, oil prices were up about 33% on the year when you look at the USO. So the American consumer is getting punched in the face because of the current administration. Okay, let's just call it what it is. There's some guy occupying the White House that a lot of people don't agree with. I don't even like to call him by his name because I have my own issues with regards to a lot of issues with how things transpired in the month of November. I don't want to discuss what transpired in November, but I think you guys know I might have given some testimony here and there. And so oil prices have shot up. Interest rates have gone up. Another $2 trillion, $1.9 trillion is being spent. They're trying to call for another $2 to $3 trillion to be spent. And now keep in mind, this is in the 2-year period. The budget deficit of the United States government between last year and this year is on track to be almost $7 trillion. And so it's a very dangerous time indeed. And I do think that there's some really horrible forces at work that are playing a different game than we might be privy to. We know things are bad. I'm not entirely sure we know just how bad they really are. And so oil's been down, and obviously the markets are down. Now, keep in mind, even with the sell-off that's occurred today in the indexes, and small caps are having a very strong year. Small caps are up probably 12% on the year. So they've still done pretty well, maybe 12, 13%. Then you have the S&P, even with the sell-off today, I think is up maybe 3 to 4%, maybe 5% on the year. So with that being said, I'm going to say it again. I sound like a broken record. Make sure you're not taking more risk than you're comfortable taking. You should always evaluate each day as a brand new day. Talk to a professional. Talk to your spouse if you're married, if you manage money together, whatever is the case. Make sure that you're not taking more risk than you're comfortable taking, and do it before things get crazy in the world. If you think they're not crazy now, it's just, that's all I would say. Look at where you were a year ago. Look at where you are now. Evaluate what you're comfortable with. Look out 5 to 10 years. How should you look at situating yourself to let math work on your side? And so, with that being said, I don't think there's anything else really pressing. It's been, like I said, oil got hurt pretty bad. There's definitely some concern with what occurred yesterday. With what the Federal Reserve said, because I know I was complaining about it yesterday, and with what happened, and I guess there was a little bit of a lag. Everybody kind of felt the same way I did last night after they digested it overnight, and it's obviously showed up today in the prices that we see, and so please keep that in mind. And I know somebody made a comment here, Bob. Thank you for my attention to detail. I do like to do the work myself. If you're interested, feel free to go to Preactive Investments and fill out a questionnaire. I'm more than happy to talk to people that might be looking for an advisor if they don't have somebody that is already managing their resources, or helping manage their resources, that is. So with that being said, I will see you guys later tonight if you're chiming in for my other broadcast. Otherwise, I will be back at 7:45 tomorrow morning to kind of highlight what I'm seeing, how things open up in the morning for the markets. So have a wonderful evening. Thank you.